If you've ever wondered how to deploy your own package to npm, stay right here because in this episode we are going to build our own custom React hook and deploy it to npm so it's available for everyone to use by the end of this video. So if you haven't got an npm account already, make sure you head over to npm. I'll put a link in the description below to the sign up link, and make sure you have an account. So we're going to need your login to actually publish this later on in the episode, so make sure you have that. So let's get started on creating our app. To test that our hooks actually work, I'm going to build our package inside a create React app sample. So let's generate that now and change into whatever directory you want this in. So I'm in my projects folder, and npx create React app, and I'll call this sample. This will take a moment and I'll let it do its thing. So npx just basically lets us run the create React app commands without having to install anything. Now that that's installed, we'll just zoom out a little bit so you can see this, but you can see that it says cd into sample. So we're going to do that and hit yarn start. So cd sample and yarn start. Well, actually what I'm going to do before I hit that, I'm going to start this inside the code editor. So we'll hit code dot to open the code or your default code editor in the current directory. So I have Visual Studio Code. So if I hit that, we open up our code editor. Now, if I jump back over, I am going to hit yarn start in here. Yarn start. And this will, okay, so I have something running on port 3000 already. So I'll just say, yes, I want to use a different port. So it's starting my development server. And as you can see, it just pops open our boilerplate create React app. Let's jump back into the code. And now what we're going to do is inside our source, I am going to make a new file or a new folder called hooks. And this is where I'm going to put my hooks. I am obviously going to just make a simple sample in this, but we'll have the structure so you could have multiple packages in here to export multiple hooks in case you wanted a few inside your npm library. And inside here, I'm going to make a new file, and this one is going to be called use kodu toggle.js. So inside here, I'm going to make a simple toggle hook, and that's just so we don't get bogged down in the details of custom hooks. So first thing we're going to do is import React from React. And I know I'm going to need to use state to change the state. So let's add in use state here as well. Now I'm going to define my hook. So we'll say use kodu toggle. And if you've noticed in the names here, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. You'll see that I have use minus kodu minus toggle. So it's a standard or a pattern you will see in a lot of places in packages for custom hooks, that we name our files use minus whatever we're doing, and then use the standard naming for our actual variables or our hooks that we're exporting. So as you can see here, I'm using this kind of minus here, or this kebab casing, and then I am using this camel casing here to actually define my hook. You can do this and name this whatever you like, it doesn't matter. I'm just pointing out why I've chosen to do it this way. So const use kodu toggle is going to be a function, and it is going to return some hooks. So the only difference between a normal component and a custom hook component is instead of returning JSX, we're going to return some logic. So I'm going to give this some logic by saying const is active, and we will say set is active. And we'll say equals to use state. And I would like to be able to pass in a default state to this. So I'm going to say active is going to be equal to false by default. But if we pass in something, we could override that. So say maybe somebody wants this toggle to be on by default. So let's let them pass in a parameter here of active. And if they pass in nothing, it'll default to false. So what I'm going to do then is, just to make sure we can see it in the console, is console.log active. And I am going to wrap this in curly brackets. It's something I like to do because it is the equivalent of saying active, and that'll just easily label my stuff in the console so I can see it a little bit easier to make sure I know where the true or false is coming from. Now let's return these hooks. And as you can see, I already had an empty array here. So I'm just going to copy these up here. And now I'm going to be able to return them. The last thing we have to do is export default use kodu toggle. Excellent. Now let's wire it up to our app to make sure it's working. So inside of our index.js, actually, I'm going to go into the app.js where we have all our actual bits and pieces or the stuff that's on the screen. I'm going to create a button in here that I'm going to use to toggle stuff. Then add in a state here. So we'll just say is active, and then we are going to look for a value of is on, we'll say, because I don't want to name it the exact same things, just as an example. So we need, this will obviously break because we have no reference to is on at the moment. So let's import our custom hook to add some logic to this. So import use kodu toggle from hooks, and then our use kodu toggle. And we are going to then use this in here. We'll say const is on, and that refers to this is active. So because we're destructuring from an array, we just give it the first parameter. And, wrong file again. And then we will say set is on, because that's where we set our setter for this. So this is going to be equal to use kodu toggle, and we'll pass it in nothing for the moment, just to make sure that the default behavior is working. We will want to change this on click. So if I go down here, I'm going to add an on click. And inside here, we'll say set is on is equal to is on. We need to return it if you're referring to the prop itself or the state itself, you pass it in as a function. So we'll have the old state, and then we're going to return not is on. Okay, so a little bit of boilerplate there, but nothing too complex. We're just setting this on and off. So this should return the is on or the true or false values as a string in here then as well. So let's jump back over to our preview. Rerun, return is not defined. So I've spelled return wrong. So if I jump back over to my use kodu toggle, I have return these hooks now. React defined and never used. Let's ignore that. And now we have our button. And if we click it, we can see it toggles. So our hook itself is not too complicated. And I didn't want to make that the complicated part of this, because this is more about how do I now get this onto NPM. So let's jump back into the code. And what I'm going to do is, if you've ever initiated a project before with npm, you have to say npm init. So if I open up my terminal and I show you where I am actually going to want to ship the contents of this folder so I can use them as a package. So if I was using multiple files here, I would probably want an entry point. So I might make an index.js where I will import all of my hooks and, just be able to import from a single file. But for this instance, we're just going to be uploading a single hook. But if you had multiple hooks in here, you'd probably just want to give a single export file so people don't have to go into directories to find your hooks. So what I'm going to do is change directory into hooks. No, search file directory. So my hooks is actually in my source. So cd into source and then cd into hooks. So I might be able to bump this up a little bit so you can see this. What I'm going to do then is we want to initiate this as its own little project. So if there was any dependencies for this to run. So what I'm going to do is npm init. Package name is hooks. I'm going to call this use kodu toggle for our package name. And this is what it will be deployed to on npm as. So you would npm install use kodu toggle after we publish this. So that naming is kind of important. I'm going to set the version to be 1.0 or the default there. And I'm not going to give it a description right now. The entry point is use kodu toggle. But if you had multiple exports, you probably want your index.js with your multiple exports in there pointing it out. I don't have any tests because I'm not going to waste my time on it for this. I have no Git repository. Please do yourself a favor, if you are making these packages for the web, put these up on Git as well, because I always recommend to people never install something on your computer that you can't see the source code. So if you can't see the source code for it, you probably shouldn't be installing it in case it's malicious. Keywords, I'm not going to worry about it right now. And the order is not going to matter right now either. So is this fine? Yes. Great. So inside of our folder here now, we have this use kodu toggle. So now looking at this, you'll see we have no dependencies, and we know that this won't work by itself because it will need React and React DOM to actually do anything. So we might want to add those as dependencies to our project or to our package that we're going to ship. So everything inside this folder is what we're actually going to deploy. So we want to let it know what dependencies it needs. So I'm going to npm install React and React DOM. Inside here, you'll see dependencies, but we don't want to have the dependencies in two places because this is a thing we call a peer dependency of this package. So it expects that you have these things already installed when you are importing this library. So it's a peer dependency is what it's called. So we can actually change this to be a peer dependency here. And that will just mean that we don't need to install it, but we do need to have it available to us. So it'll keep our package a little bit smaller. I'm going to just delete this to make sure we have everything working as expected. npm install. Perfect. And as you can see, nothing installs with our peer dependencies. So it's just going to warn us that we need this if we pull it in or if we don't have it. So now that we have this all set up, And we have our entry point, our use code toggle. That's going to be the default if somebody starts using our package. What we're going to do is finally ship this. So we just have to first npm login. You'll put in your username. The next thing you're going to put in is your password, and I am going to fetch mine from my password manager. And something to be aware of when you're typing in your password here is just be careful, because you can't actually see how many characters you're typing. It just stays blank. So as I'm typing my password here, you can't actually see it. Then it will prompt you to add your email, and this is going to be public. And since my email is available on my business site publicly anyway, I don't think this is going to make much of a difference. Ooh, I have an incorrect password. So I had to jump off there. I actually forgot my password. I had not saved it to my keychain, so I had to reset it. So now I can log in. As you can see, I'm logged in as Niall Joe Maher, and what I can do is just make sure I am in the right directory, and I am. I have my package.json and I have my hook. So all we have to do then is, once we have our name decided, and make sure that you have what you want, and I'm thinking nobody will have use code toggle taken, so you can check in npm if you're worried about what's been taken, and we can just say npm publish from that directory. And we'll let that run for a second. I'll jump back in when it's finished publishing. Okay, so now we have just deployed use -kodu -toggle at 1.0.0. So we have version 1 of our toggle. And what you will get when you've done this after a minute or two, usually, is an email from npm confirming that it has been released. So let me just check my emails here real quick. You can ignore the unopened emails. I'm clearly very good at getting back to emails. They're usually just GitHub notifications, in fairness. So it took about 60 seconds and I received this email saying that I successfully published the package. Now, if I jump back over to my profile or my npm profile, I should see it as well. So on my profile, if I refresh this now, we have a package and it's publicly available. Let's have a look. And what we have here, it's just going to jump in and we have our package. So as you can see, if you have a GitHub linked or a description or any of that, it will all be linked here. This is where your keywords would be. So if you wanted to be found by people, you'd make sure you have keywords. Now, let's make sure it works as a package. So I'm going to jump back in and replace our hook with our new npm use code toggle. So back in our project, what I am going to do is change back out of the directory I was in. So we are back in there, we're in source, so we don't want to be there. So we'll cd one further. And I am back in the root, and I want to add our use code toggle. And we can use that very easily now. We can just npm install use code toggle. Give this a second to install. Took a little while because I had used Yarn initially with the setup by default for the Create React app as it was shown in the docs, but I'm using npm for this to not confuse things. Now you could Yarn add this package and it will be available as well if you want to just keep using Yarn. So I have my package.lock now, and I have my use code toggle is in here. So if I jump back into my app.js, instead of importing use code toggle from there, I am going to import it from, look at this, I saved like 5 or 6 characters. Save it, and hopefully this works now. So let's jump over to the code or the preview again. Now let's test it out, and if we click it, we still have things working. Amazing. And if we go back over, remember I said that it takes the default, so let's make sure it'll default to true as well if I do that. So I save and it should be refreshed. and the default is true here. Now let's jump back over to the code. I just want to talk about semantic versioning and what those numbers mean when we were releasing versions for our package. So in our package, you'll see, I'm going to close this over to save some room here and zoom in a bit. In here, you'll see we have 3 numbers, and they stand for major, minor, and patch. So a major release would be a breaking change. So if you changed your API, or if somebody upgraded your package and suddenly their stuff breaks, this is usually a good indicator that you should bump this first number. A minor is usually added when you've maybe added a feature, but it doesn't interfere with existing things. So it's safe to update, but it might add features, but it won't break anything. So use that if it's a safe thing to update. So if we added, say, a third setter in our toggle feature, that won't break anything. It'll just be a feature that's added. And then the last one is patch. So say what we want to do is get rid of that console log because it really doesn't do anything for us. That's a bug that it wasn't meant to be in it to begin with. We might just want to bump that up to 1.0.1 and go back over to our files. And because I wasn't using it at all, we'll just save that. And we could go over then back into our terminal. Let's cd back into our source and hooks. And we can just run npm publish because we'll still be logged in. Oh, actually, I didn't save the file. That would have been meaning we're doing nothing. So let's npm publish that again. And we'll have just updated a little patch version. So now we'll see that we've just added a patch version to fix that little bug. So as you can see, it's not too complicated to actually do these things yourself. I hope you found this video useful. And if you did, I would love it if you hit the subscribe button and the little notification bell to make sure you get updated when the next video is out. And until next time, happy coding.